I really wanted to share with you my experience as a parent of 3 children with dyslexia and potential ADHD, and hopefully share some kind of hints, tips, strategies to inspire and empower you to support your children. So, who am I? I'm going to do a brief overview because some of you might know a lot about me, others of you might not know anything about me. So I'm Jo Rees. I live on the Isle of Wight and I'm married to my childhood sweetheart. We've been married for 24 years this year. I was initially a primary school teacher. That was my background. And very quickly, it became apparent that I was very good at working with children that had additional needs. It was kind of like my mission to make sure they made as much progress as all of the children in the class. And I now know actually that was because I was an undiagnosed dyslexic, and it was because my dad had this awful school experience that I wanted to make sure no child had that experience that he had. But I'm not going to go into too much detail because I could talk about that for ages. So I was always very, very passionate about inclusion. And actually became a Senko in just my second year of teaching, which is very unusual to become a Senko that quickly, but I was that passionate about it and that good at it, actually. I was identified in my school as being the Senko. I wear my heart on my sleeve. If you follow me on TikTok, you'll know that I'm very honest in what I talk about. And I'm very passionate, and that's brilliant, but it does mean that I do sometimes get into trouble. I am the parent of 3 children with dyslexia, and they also potentially all have ADHD, though none of them have a diagnosis. And I'm actually going to talk about that a bit more later on. As a person, I like to put the possible into impossible, and I class myself as a lifelong learner. So when I became a teacher, I made a promise that I would always remember what it was like to learn something new. I think sometimes as adults, we stay nicely in our comfort zones, which is brilliant, but that doesn't necessarily enable us to be good teachers because we forget what it's like to learn something new. And actually learning something new is really difficult. So I constantly set myself challenges to learn new things. I actually got a diagnosis of dyslexia at the age of 34 and founded Another Way Round Dyslexia Support not long after that. At the time, I was a Senko. I'd actually been a specialist dyslexia assessor and teacher for the local authority, and I'd got made redundant. So I went back into school as a Senko. But I just got to the point where I was just burnt out, and I just couldn't do it anymore, from the point of view that the Senko is a really tricky job, because you are balancing parent expectations with teacher expectations, with budget. And interestingly, lots of Senkos burn out. It's something I come across quite a lot. When I say I'm a lifelong learner and I like to set challenges, I've actually run 2 marathons in my life, believe it or not, and self-published 2 books. So Don't Forget to Smile was a therapeutic write just after I got my dyslexia diagnosis, and it's a memoir outlining my experiences of dyslexia. It's called Don't Forget to Smile, The Secrets of Dyslexia, Where It Hides and How to Find It. And it talks through my life and all those places where dyslexia showed up that I didn't realize it was dyslexia. And Today You Got a Diagnosis of Dyslexia is a children's book. And quite often after an assessment, parents will say to me, how do I explain dyslexia to my child? What does it actually mean? So the book basically talks you through how I would explain what dyslexia is. And the beautiful thing about the book is that it is illustrated by Meg L. Hewison, who was one of my first ever students. So I really try and tap into my students that I've worked with for inspiration. And Meg's actually illustrated and helped me self-publish that book. And the other thing I do, which I've probably done for the last 4 years now, is I have got a big social media presence. I have a big following on TikTok, but I am on all social media platforms at Dyslexic Life of Jo Rees, and that's kind of growing all the time, really, in terms of advocacy. And I'm also about to write my 3rd book, which I'm hoping to have a publisher for, which is going to be a parent's guide. It's going to basically be a parent's guide to education. So I'm excited about that. Right, enough about me. Hopefully that explains to you why I'm qualified to talk to you about dyslexia and parenting. So when we become a parent for the first time, we have got no idea at that particular point in time that our child is going to be neurodivergent. But, you know, when we become a parent, we feel helpless, we feel worried, overwhelmed, lost, anxious. It's exhausting, frustrating. We feel like we don't have the skills and we feel lonely. Like that happens if we haven't got a neurodivergent child. But suddenly our child goes to school and something doesn't seem right. Or at some point through their education, it becomes that they've got some kind of like learning difference. And that is massively exacerbated. You know, I think it's like I say, parenting at the best of times is tricky, but actually, when you've got a neurodivergent child, in some ways, it's even more tricky. And I'm going to talk you through why I think that is. So, the support needs to be super balanced. So, as parents, often we just want our children to be happy and we just want them to experience success. And the trouble is, we can be in control of that before they go to school, and we can be in control of that outside of school. But when they go to school, they're in school 5 days a week from 9 till 3, and there is not, we can't control what is going on in that time. And unfortunately, if you've got a neurodivergent child, they are going to experience failure. And even if they manage to keep up academically, and many don't, one of the things that parents quite often report is a change in behaviour. And I can remember it with 2 of my children, not my middle one as much, but I can remember like they go into school like with this joy and freedom and oozing personality. And very quickly, they become quite reserved, they become kind of anxious or stressed. Like some parents kind of describe their child as coming out of school almost like a coiled spring. I think it's tricky. So as parents, we need to find a way to balance failure and survival with success and safety. And the example I'm going to give you is, so I've got 3 children. They're currently 15, 18 and 20. So the example I'm going to give you is my 18-year-old has just gone on holiday today. So there's going to be lots of anecdotes in this for the simple reason that I just feel like it is quite helpful for me to illustrate situations. So my 18-year-old has gone on holiday today. Now, I think she's probably the most ADHD out of all of them. She doesn't have a diagnosis. She doesn't want a diagnosis in case she wants to be a pilot one day. She's not going to be a pilot one day, but she likes to keep her options open. And she's booked this holiday, paid for this holiday, sorted it all out completely on her own. Now, that has been very painful to watch at times because actually her cognitive function, her ability to be able to organize herself is very impulsive, very chaotic, very last minute. So, you know, she's gone and I'm pretty sure she hasn't got a toothbrush, she hasn't got an adapter. There was something else I don't think she's got. But those things are not going to be the end of the world. Like those things, they're going to be a problem, but she can sort that out when she gets there. Whereas her passport, that was something that I did remind her of because she's gone abroad and she's definitely going to need that. That is kind of a crass example, if you like, at the other end of the extreme, but it gives you an example of how we need to, there's this balance the whole way through parenting with a neurodivergent child. Like, how much do you protect them and how much do you do for them? How resilient are they at the time because school is or isn't breaking them? And can we still ensure that they experience success? I find it's a really, really, really difficult balance that we mostly get right. But I just think it's something that we need to think about because sometimes parents unintentionally want their children to be so successful, they do everything for them. And that doesn't help them in the long run because we do need to experience some sort of failure in order to be successful. We need to make mistakes. That's how we learn. But it's balancing that confidence and that self-esteem and that failure with enough success that it doesn't have a negative impact. So as parents then, so I've talked about how we have these bright, sparky kids before they go to school, and then they enter the education system, and we're working with a broken system. Told you I wore my heart on my sleeve. Like, I think most professionals, even teachers, would say the system is broken. It's not fit for purpose for any child, let alone neurodivergent children. So if we choose to educate our children, not home educate our children and send them to school, which, to be fair, most parents do. I've sent my children to school. We have to look at how we can work with it and what we can change. Because even if Jamie Oliver's campaign is successful, spoiler alert, it's not going to change in the next 12 months. Like, it's going to take ages for it to change and go in a different direction. So as parents and as a parent, I have looked at how I could work with it and what I can change. Now, I appreciate I was in quite a privileged position because I had been a classroom teacher, I had been a Senko, and I was a specialist dyslexia teacher. But actually, it's knowing and understanding the limitations of what school can and can't change, what their budget is, what interventions are available with our expectations as parents. So one of the things that is within our control is selecting a school and building a relationship with the school. Now, I know that in lots of areas you don't particularly have a choice with a school because schools are oversubscribed and they're within your catchment area. But what I would say is when looking and thinking about selecting a school, there is always an element of choice. And actually, it's about going and looking at any school that might be a possibility for you and working out what is right for your child, not what is necessarily right for their best friend. So quite often when it comes to selecting schools, it becomes a really big thing, particularly that transition from primary to secondary school. And it almost becomes quite competitive between parents. And actually, we want to be looking at a school that works for our child, but also works for us and our family dynamic, because there might be an incredible school, but if it's a 26-mile drive away and you're not going to be able to get them there, then that potentially isn't going to work for you. So when selecting a school, a couple of tips, a couple of things that I would ask you to look out for. I would always meet the Senko. I would always look at the website to see what provision is available for dyslexic children. I would ask the Senko what dyslexic friendly practice they've got in their school, what happens in terms of discrete intervention, and what happens within the classroom. And you as a parent will get a gut feel as to whether that school is right or not. The other thing I would look for is if you've got a child that's got a special talent, like if they're really good at football or really good at rugby or really good at music, performing, art, you want to make sure that the school they're going to is going to nurture that, they've got facilities to be able to nurture that particular talent. Because actually it's those things that are going to counter out the academic experiences. And you might be surprised to know I'm not really talking about intervention and academic stuff in this webinar, because actually our role as a parent is to keep our child's confidence and self-esteem intact and look at what we can change kind of around that. We also want to build a good relationship with school, and I've got a whole slide on that in a minute. As parents, we can also impact what they experience outside of school. And that's what I'm going to talk a lot about. And if you follow me on social media, you'll notice that recently I've been braver and my children have given me the wink that it's okay. That actually, you know, I can't control what happens in school. School, even though they try really hard, is never going to be where they thrive. So actually, for me, it's always been, I don't blame teachers for that. I do blame the system for that, but I can't change that. So actually, what positive experiences can I give them outside of school to counteract that negative experience? So those are things that as parents, we can control and we can support. So now I want to talk about expectations, because there is an expectation that they make educational progress, and they do need to attain to a certain level in order to be functioning human beings in society. And most parents, when they bring their child for an assessment, or I do mentoring or coaching with them, you know, they so often say, I just want my child to be happy. Like, as long as my child is trying their best and they are happy, that's all that matters to me. And, you know, you might not be one of those parents, but, you know, mostly that's what parents say. The problem is, if we choose to send our children to school, there's the curriculum expectation. And the trouble is, the curriculum goes way too quickly, often for neurotypical brains. And if you've got a neurodivergent brain, you've got slightly slower processing, or you've got a weakness with working memory, often the curriculum goes so quickly that our children can't keep up. So what happens is gaps appear, but because often neurodivergent children are intelligent, like we're talking about specific learning difficulties here, so children that have got areas of strength coupled with areas of weakness, they are aware more often than not that they are not making the progress that they should be making. They are aware that they are on the bottom table, and I hate that, but they are aware that they are in the lowest spelling set that's only got five, that's only got five set spellings. They are often aware that they are not where they should be, and that confidence and self-esteem is already being kind of chipped away at from a really, really, really early age. So even though we as parents are saying we just want you to be happy and we just want you to do well, we have got this curriculum expectation that not only us as parents are managing, but the teachers have to manage, because that's how they're measured. They're measured by how they deliver the curriculum, which is prescriptive. So I've talked a bit about our parental expectations already, because like I say, we're like, we just want you to be happy. We just want you to learn to read, write and spell. Like, that is the most important thing. Then there's the child's expectation. So what often happens is initially is the child tends to be, for those first few years of school, kind of blissfully unaware, not always, but often, blissfully unaware that they're not where they should be. And then they hit kind of like end of year 1, year 2, year 3, maybe a bit later, and they suddenly realise that actually they're not on the same reading band as their peers, or they're not getting all of their spellings right every week, despite them kind of putting all of this brilliant effort in. And suddenly, as parents, we're then having to manage our child's expectations. When our children come home to us and say, "Oh, I'm so stupid, I'm not clever," just drop me a comment with a thumbs up if your child has ever said that. I'm dumb. It's actually happened with one of my children at the moment. As a parent, that is heartbreaking, and actually we just want to wrap them up in cotton wool and kind of remove them from the situation, but we can't do that because they've got to somehow get through the education system. So as parents, we're suddenly dealing with this kind of emotional friction of our real happy, bright child that was doing brilliantly, kind of having this huge dip in their confidence and self-esteem. That makes us sad, but sometimes that can make us almost what I call like tiger parent. It can make us like, quite angry with the teacher because we want to be cross with somebody, and the person that's easiest to be cross with is the person at the front line, which is the teacher. And sometimes we do have to have conversations with teachers, but I think it's just being mindful of what we can or can't control. So then the other thing is teacher expectations. So because teachers are teaching to the curriculum, because their pay is attached to the progress that a child makes, their expectations, you've got another kind of expectation in the mix there that is placed on your child. So the example I'm going to give is that in order to pass year 6 SAT writing and be at age-related expectations, children have to do cursive writing. So that is why teachers push cursive writing from the beginning. They don't push it necessarily because they believe in it or because they think it's best for the child. They push it because it's what the curriculum tells them they have to do in order to demonstrate that that child is making progress in his age-related expectations. Okay, so the teachers often don't have an awful lot of kind of flexibility in what they're able to deliver. The other thing I want to point out to you at this point is teachers will likely only have had 1 or 2 hours training in dyslexia in their whole teaching. And Senko's similar. Like, Senkos are just teachers that are enthusiastic and passionate about supporting children with SEND. They're very, very, very rarely specialists. So actually, you as a parent, if you've done a bit of research and you're proactive, which you all clearly are because you're here tonight, at times you will know more about dyslexia and your child than the teacher, which is the reality, but sometimes that can upset teachers. So we've got all of these expectations. So the reality is that actually attainment does matter sometimes. Talk a bit more about that later on, but attainment does matter. And even if it doesn't matter to us as parents, it matters when it comes to them taking their GCSEs. It matters when it comes to them getting a job. It matters in terms of the child making them feel like they're making progress. It matters in terms of how they're able to access the curriculum. It's our job as parents to look and explore the bigger picture, though. So even though attainment matters, there are things we can do around that to boost our child's confidence and self-esteem, to enable them to make progress or feel good about themselves, but in a different way. Queen of another way around here, so I always find another way. So the example I'm going to give you is, once upon a time, I worked with a parent who had 3 children. And the first 2 children were neurotypical, sailed through their year 6 apps, no problem whatsoever. The youngest came along, and the youngest really struggled. Very bright, but really struggled. And actually, when I look back now, was dyslexic, but was probably dyscalculic as well. And I had this really panicked phone call from a parent in floods of tears one day saying, I don't know what to do. I've tried everything, but for whatever reason, I can't get my daughter to tell the time on an analog clock. So analog is the clock that's got the numbers on it that goes around in a circle, just in case you're not sure. She can tell the time on a digital clock, but she cannot tell the time on an analog clock. And I don't know what to do. It's causing so much friction. She's crying, I'm crying, and I don't know where to go next. So I said, right, can I just ask, let's just stop and breathe for a minute. Can I just ask why, if she can tell the time on a digital clock, on a digital watch, why are you trying to get her to tell the time on an analog clock? Because she can tell the time, she can just tell it on a digital clock, not an analog clock. And the parent said to me, because her teacher said that it might come up in a SATs paper, and if it comes up in a SATs paper and she can't tell time on an analog clock, then she won't get that mark. And I can remember saying to the parent, okay, if that is genuinely your reason for chipping away, I'm sorry, it's not a good enough reason. Like, all that's going to happen is when she meets that paper and that meets a question, if there happens to be a question in the SATs paper, she's just going to move on to the next question, and she's going to leave that one and come back to it at the end if she's got time. The key thing here is the child can tell the time. So actually what we need to be doing is ensuring that that child has a digital watch, so that she's always got the digital time with her. We need to be empowering her so that when she is older, on public transport or being independent, if she hasn't got access to a digital watch on her phone or on her watch, or can't see one, she feels confident enough to ask somebody what the time is. Like, actually, that's what we need to be focusing on. We need to be focusing on what your child can do, not what your child can't do. The relief in this parent's voice, she was like, oh, that suddenly makes so much sense to me. Like, I can see how by pushing and trying to get her to do that thing she's finding difficult, all it was doing was reinforcing that negative experience that she was having at school, and just making her feel even worse about herself, and not making the relationship between the parent and the child good either. So focus on what your child can do. And with that in mind, I'm now going to tell you a story about my son. So I can remember my son, he actually got a scholarship. And that was one of the things I didn't say, actually. When selecting schools, don't write off independent schools and scholarships. If you've got children that have got specific talent, independent schools do have scholarships and bursary programs available. And it's just worth exploring them, because you literally never know. Somebody has got to get them. And why shouldn't it be your child? But he actually started at an independent school in year 9, and he was quite behind when he started, and he was in the lower sets. And on his first day, he came home and he said, "Oh man, it was amazing. The assembly was really good, but he said I felt really disappointed." He said, because at the front, at the start of the assembly, all the children that got straight 9s in their GCSEs, they were asked to stand up at the front. And we gave them a big round of applause. And he said, like, what an amazing achievement to get like straight 9s and 8s in your GCSE. And then he said to me, but I felt sad because that's never going to be me. And I said to him, you're right, it isn't ever going to be you. Now, I didn't say that to him to make him feel sad, but the reality is, and that's not that my expectations weren't high, the reality was he was never going to get straight 9s. And actually, he didn't need to get straight 9s to do what he wanted to do. So I said, no, you're not going to have that moment, but you'll have a different moment. Like, you will have a moment. It won't be that moment, but you will have a different moment. And we will actively look for that moment for you. We will make that moment happen. So he was in year 9 then. So when he left in year 13, there still hasn't particularly been a moment until his very last music concert. So his thing was music, and we've always massively pushed the music. And he played lots of instruments. He played the piano, he played the trumpet, he played the drums. And there was lots of different ensembles. Anyway, basically, he made the decision that he would make a guest appearance. So very subtly, there was no announcement. And he was in every single ensemble. So he was in the string ensemble. He taught himself to play the double bass. For the junior choir, he played the piano for them. I think he played the drums for something else. He was literally in every ensemble. He ran out of time to teach himself to play a couple of notes on the flute, and the flute teacher had sussed out what he was doing, and she was amazing. And she said, we're actually playing a piece of music called Time for Tea. She said, how do you feel about playing the teacups, Bill? He was like, yeah. Anyway, he accompanied the flute quartet playing the teacup. I'm not joking, he got 7 notes out of this teacup. It was just incredible. And afterwards he said to me, Mum, that was my moment. Like, that was my moment where I felt amazing and was able to do something that other people weren't able to do. So as parents, don't give up hope. It's about finding the right way for your child, and there is opportunities, but you need to be prepared to look for them, and they aren't going to necessarily be conventional routes, if that makes sense. So one of the things that I have massively done, obviously with my husband, because we parent our children together, is we have always focused on our children's strengths and in developing life skills. Now, you can see they're playing the trumpet. Bill's just playing the trumpet. My daughter there, she actually went to watch a concert in London. She went to watch Olivia Rodrigo last year, and she was so determined to go. She scaled the internet for months to get a ticket. Did so much research into it. But, you know, she got herself there and back because we'd skilled them up from a very early age with life skills. And my youngest there, she saw an audition for the School of Rock, actually on the mainland. I live on the Isle of Wight. And I really didn't want her to go to the audition because I had no idea how I was going to get her there. If she actually got the part, I was like, I can go with you to the audition, but I don't know what happens when you get the part because I can't be off island twice a week. Anyway, basically, she got the part. First of all, she taught herself to play the bass guitar because she didn't play the bass guitar before she went for the audition. She taught herself to play the bass guitar, and went to the audition, got the part. She's so incredible at talking to people. I mean, she was only 12 at the time. She befriended the musical director, and they wanted her to do it so much they basically helped and sorted out a whole lift scheme to get her there and back. I didn't do any of that. My kids did that. Now, what we've really tried to do from a really early age is focus on developing life skills. And actually, life skills and key skills are really important, and school doesn't necessarily teach them that. And again, it's not a criticism of school, it's just not in the curriculum. But what happens is the curriculum, as we've mentioned, almost bashes the confidence and self-esteem out of them, so that when they come out of school, if we're not careful, they're so broken, they don't have the confidence to give things like this a go. So can only speak from my own personal experience. And, you know, I wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia until I was 34, but travel for me is a nightmare. Like, I get so anxious when I travel. And, you know, when I got my diagnosis and the more I've understood it, I totally know why now. Like, travel is overwhelming. It's times I struggle with times, like it's reading the language, like there's so much language involved. And even though I've got strategies in place to help me with that now, like my belief system is still shaped. Very occasionally, when something goes wrong, you go back to that negative experience. So what we tried to do with our children from a really early age was make sure that they didn't have that anxiety around life skills and were independent, functioning human beings. So one of the examples I'm going to give you is I taught all to change their bed, to be able to change their bed and use a washing machine at about 8 years old. Sounds like a really silly thing, and I'm sure lots of you do it. But actually, that skill set my son apart at a residential. So he really struggled friendship wise at school. He had to move schools, didn't particularly have an awful lot of friends, massively struggled academically. Suddenly, they go on this residential and they turn up and the beds aren't made. So there's clean bedding in a pile and then the duvet and the pillow. So before anybody else has even kind of realized it, he has put his duvet cover and his pillow on his bed and it's made. The amount of kids that had no clue how to do that, he's suddenly this hero and he's helping everybody. And again, he suddenly like had this little moment that was his and enabled him to feel good about himself. So what we're wanting to do is find ways that we can develop those positive learning behaviors and give them little moments. Another example I'm going to give you is that confidence and resilience grows when we're enjoying something. And in order to learn something, a natural part of learning is making mistakes. But when we enjoy something, it's much easier to be resilient because we want to get better at it or we're motivated by it. It's what we call purpose driven. So, he plays the trumpet. He found exams to be super tricky, surprise, surprise, particularly remembering the scales. But he was very, very resilient. And he, these days, not when I was growing up, but like now, like literally, you've got the answers in a computer with Google, haven't you? I mean, now you've even got the answers with AI, but 10 years ago, he would practice his scales. And if he couldn't remember one, he would Google it and he would find somebody playing it because he learned it by ear, really, not by reading music. Or he would ask his dad who could help him. There were a whole bank of strategies he could use. So then, when he was struggling with maths one day and was having a tantrum that he couldn't remember how to do this particular maths and he was just so stupid because he couldn't do it, and why couldn't he remember it because he'd only just been taught it in school, I was able to say, right, let's think about your trumpet. When you practiced last week, you couldn't remember that scale. Sometimes if we want to get good at things, we have to practice. First of all, so this maths equation is exactly the same, just got to practice it. Practice makes perfect, practice makes getting better. But also think about what strategies did you use to help you work out the trumpet. It was I Googled, I found a YouTube video. So I was like, right, let's find a YouTube video that can help you solve that maths, that help you work out how to do that maths process. So actually, through the things that they love, you're able to develop really helpful, positive learning behaviors that they can then leverage and transition back into more challenging situations. It's the same for travel. When she researched her travel or when they researched their travel, that's research. So, when it comes to, research projects at school, they've already got some skills. They're already familiar with kind of looking at stuff, but also I think it's about giving them that purpose. And actually, if they're confident and they're happy and they're fulfilled, the literacy stuff comes naturally. So we have tried all sorts of things in terms of the extracurricular. Sometimes they've experienced success, sometimes they haven't. But actually, we tried lots of things so that they could find the thing that they were good at. And actually, by those extracurricular things, I've talked about a lot of this already, but they experience success, they learn independence, they develop resilience, but it also gives them a value and a worth outside of their educational experience. So their confidence and their self-esteem isn't wholly reliant on their academic grades. It also just allows them to be themselves, because so often kids go into school and because the curriculum is so 2D, they just become carbon copies of each other. And actually, extracurricular stuff just allows them to be individual and to be them. So right diagnosis at the right time. So not all of my children are diagnosed. So my son, none of them have got an ADHD diagnosis, although we are actually seeking one for my youngest at the moment. But my son got a diagnosis in year 6 because he needed that to support him with the transition. I couldn't do it, had to commission somebody to do it. You can't assess your own children. And also to get him additional time access arrangements in SATs. His school wouldn't do it without that. And actually his school had been as supportive as they could be until that point. So he got his diagnosis then. Middle one still doesn't have a diagnosis, although she probably will have an assessment report. She's off to uni and she can access DSA if we do that. And then the youngest got her dyslexia assessment and diagnosis when she was very start of year 3, which was quite early. But the reason why we got that diagnosis is because her anxiety levels were really high and because she needed to understand that what she was experiencing was not her brain, was not her, sorry, it was her brain and the way her brain thought. So, you know, diagnosis, there isn't a right or a wrong time. There's the time that is right for your child and the time that fits for you as a parent. And often parents say, how will I know if the time is right? You will just know, like your gut will tell you that now is the time to get that diagnosis. So often I hear parents say, parent empowerment, I have to be that parent. Now, what I would say is, having been a teacher and a Senko, that parent, I get it. Like, I get that we're passionate. I get that it's emotionally driven. I've already talked about that. But actually, when we're really confrontational and we're pushing, often teachers and school push back. We really need to be finding a way to build a relationship with school and teachers because we need school on side. Your child needs school on side. Now, at primary school, like sometimes you have the same teacher all the time. Sometimes what happens is you have a teacher that doesn't particularly get your child for 1 year, and that year you almost have to write off. Secondary school is slightly different because they move around, and the reality is there will always be teachers that don't get your child. So what we want to be doing is we want to be trying to work with the school, not against it. But as parents, we need to advocate initially, but we have to teach our children to advocate for themselves. So I've recently actually just come across this. Like, I have from secondary school, once children get their own emails and stuff, I empower my children and I sit with them initially. But you know, if a teacher isn't doing something or needs to be doing something differently or something's not working, I always empower my children to send an email or to have a conversation with that teacher first of all. And if nothing changes after that, then I will step in as a parent. But usually empowering your children to have that conversation can be really powerful because it opens up a dialogue with the teacher in terms of trying to get the provision right for the individual child. It's all about building confidence. The other thing, which I'm a really big advocate for, is helping children, and even when I'm coaching adults in the workplace, actually, find an ally. Now, an ally can be anybody from the dinner lady to the receptionist to a class TA. It needs to be an adult, the pastoral person, it could be the year head, but it needs to be somebody that sees the child and gets the child and that the child trusts. Now, the reason why I say you need an inside ally is because sometimes as parents, we've only got, obviously we listen to our children and we are our children's advocates, but sometimes how our children report it isn't necessarily how it always is. But also, often there's a lot of underlying politics going on in schools that we're not aware of. So actually, if you can find, they can find an ally in school, when something comes up, let's just say a teacher isn't differentiating, or, you know, a teacher is constantly kind of picking them up on the same thing, for example, by having a conversation with that ally, it may well be that lots of children or lots of parents are having a similar difficulty with that teacher. And actually, that teacher just needs a bit more training and support in terms of neurodivergence. Or it might actually be that that ally, that advocate in school can help fight your child's corner, knowing the politics and the kind of bigger picture of what's going on. So I always recommend helping your children find it. So sorry, I was going to be finished by 1:45, but I've talked for ages, but we will still do a Q&A. So parent pinch points then. So homework can be super stressful. Now, I'll be honest, homework is something in primary. There is a lot of research actually to say that homework in primary doesn't make an awful lot of difference. If you can do reading, spelling and maths, I would say, and the maths that's sent home, I would say that's okay. But actually secondary, it does have a bit more impact. For me, it was all about routine, little and often, and thinking about the time of the day that they do it. Like often at the end of the day, they're really tired. So, you know, what can they fit in before they go to school in the morning? Actually, is there a day of the week that's better to do homework because they're less tired or there are less things happening? But, you know, homework can be a battle. And actually, as parents, we want to be having a good relationship with our child, not kind of like battling. So again, if homework is too much, I would also always recommend that you have conversations with school. Organisation, particularly if you've got dyslexic ADHDers. So routine can be really important. Doing kind of the same thing at the same time every day can really help. I always find that end of terms, more things always get forgotten because working memory is overloaded because there's a lot less routine or they need different things than usual. So actually it's about how we as parents respond to that when they've forgotten something. I try very hard to go, oh no, not again. Like, because actually they will already be feeling bad that they haven't got it. Like, it's our job actually to just try and manage that best we can. And again, going right back to the beginning, it's picking and choosing our battles. So, you know, if I can, I will get them what they've forgotten. But actually, there's been other times where I've gone, actually, on this occasion, you're going to have to find a way around it because I just really can't. But you as a parent know you're cool with that. Checklists, tough love, I've just mentioned that there, and teaching proactive organisation. So I found this picture. I've recently been sorting my pictures out, and I don't know if you can see, this isn't here anymore, but by the front door, this was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Obviously, nothing happened on a Friday at this particular term. But by the front door was their names and everything they needed to take. And that worked really well for us. And we built in time every day to be organised. You almost have to teach it as a skill. And the other thing is, and funnily enough, I chose my middle child for this one. When our child is different to us, that can be really frustrating, but actually frustration doesn't help. So we need to try and find a way to meet them halfway. And we need to keep exploring different strategies because actually what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another person. And when I say don't compare, I don't even mean not comparing children in your own house. Comparing, oh, this worked for that dyslexic, so why isn't it working for you? Like, it really is about trial and error and finding the things that work for your child and your family. And it is exactly that. It's trial and error. There's no quick fix. It's about finding the things that work for you. But the thing that really helps is having a positive relationship with your children and keeping the doorways to conversation open so that they know that you're on their side. SATs, exams and revision then. Whether we like it or not, we are in an exam-based system. They have to do year 6 SATs and they have to do exams. One of the questions I get asked super often is, does my dyslexic kid have to do the SATs? And I always say, it's up to you. You can have a conversation with the school. But for me, I can only speak from my own personal experience. For me, we use SAT as practice GCSE exams. And the success criteria was you just got through them. Like if you just got through them and you just did them, that was the success criteria. And they did all mostly pass them, actually. Actually, Jemima didn't take hers because we were in COVID, but it's all about how we frame it, you know. And again, if we go back to those expectations, there's going to be a lot of teacher and school pressure because the league tables are done on those results. So it's our responsibility as parents to kind of manage that expectation, counteract it for our children. So it's about looking at what success looks like for them, what are their next steps and what grade do they need. So particularly when they go to secondary, you will find that there are a lot of teachers that quite rightly push their own subject. And why wouldn't they push their own subject? But your child might not need the grade that teacher thinks that they can get in that subject. So it's about looking at what your child needs to be successful in order to access the next step. When it comes to revision, I've only got time to touch on this super briefly, but it's about little and often. It's using the revision clinics and teachers at school. Enlist tutors if you can afford it, and if you need to, there are lots of kind of different priced options out there. Use the internet, video tutorials, BBC Bite Size. My biggest tip, if you've got a dyslexic child, is to get hold of key vocabulary, particularly for subjects like science and geography, that's got a whole load of vocabulary that is specific to the subject itself. Because actually, if we can get them familiar with hearing, understanding, and reading the vocabulary, not necessarily even spelling it, it takes a huge strain away from working memory. So that is my big tip. So confidence then. So I'm just going to very quickly talk about my children's program that I'm launching, because you've got exclusive access to it for the next 24 hours, and then we will go to questions. It will just take a couple of minutes. So when it comes to confidence, your children might not be like this, but the majority of parents I speak to, education breaks our children really and makes them feel like they're less than. And that's because it regularly compares them to their peers. It measures them in the things that they find most challenging. So reading and spelling skill, the thing that even if they can do it, they're not efficient at, and it drains them. They lose everything individual about them as they try and comply and people please. And they often become ashamed of their different thinking, of their different approach to something, because it's laughed at by their peers, or teachers tell them that they can't do it the way that they're doing it. So they become ashamed of the fact that they think differently. So parents often say to me, how do I build my child's confidence back up? So in order to build confidence, whether we're neurodivergent or not, whether we're a child or an adult, we need to experience more success than failure. We need to be in control of our own progress and our own learning, because actually, if we're in control of it, we're then in control of how much failure we have and how much success we have. And if it is a failure, we're in control of that, and somehow it feels better. We have to value the way we think, and we have to value our individual skill set, because we need to feel like we can contribute, and we need to feel like we can tackle things. We also need to develop the independence and trust in our own voice and action. So often what happens is children, and I can include myself in this, like we question our ability, we question whether something's right or not, because it's drilled into us at school that you have to do things this way because this is the right way, because this is the way the curriculum is telling you to do it. So even if that way doesn't work for you and works against your brain, you stop trusting that inner voice. And we have to believe in ourselves. And it doesn't matter how many times we tell our children they're brilliant and they're confident and, you're fantastic and you're so good at this. If your child isn't believing that inside them, it's not going to make any difference. Confidence and self-belief comes from within, and it comes from valuing ourselves and our voice and experiencing more success than failure. So I have created the Confidence Blueprint, and I am so proud of this. I am really proud of it. So the Confidence Blueprint is an online structured program created specifically for different thinking kids who feel broken by the daily reality of the education system. Okay. It's designed to generate unstoppable confidence in different thinkers who feel broken by the system. It utilizes a structure that's purpose-driven and taps into their interests. So I've talked a lot about how we're much more motivated when we feel like we've got a purpose and we're in control of that learning. So the program is based on quests that the children or the young person choose and that they are in control of. It's activities and resources that are equivalent to at least 24 specialist lessons. It develops and builds on key life skills that will set them apart, not only now, but when they finish school. You're going to develop their individual thinking and skills at their own pace and in their own way, so that they experience success after success after success, because that's how we build confidence. And as they work through each cycle, because it's a circular program, you're going to watch your child go from feeling broken to feeling brilliant about their differences. Okay, so in a nutshell, basically, this is how it works. So it starts off with Success Skills Base Camp. And there are 12 key skills that they're going to measure themselves out of 10 for each skill as to how confident they feel in using that skill. They're then going to pick one of the purpose-driven quests. Okay, so I've just got the public transport one here. There is a little video that accompanies it, and each quest has got a level 1 and a level 2. So that's why I'm saying there's 12 quests, but there's 24 tasks in total. So for example, level 1 is all about planning and using public transport. So looking at timetables, routes, maps, directions, where they want to go. And without realizing it, they're looking at language, and you're giving them a chance to develop skills and to develop reading skills and to be looking at language without them even realizing that they're doing it. Okay. Quite interestingly, a couple of parents trialed it for me. It was called something different initially, and a couple of parents trialed it for me. And interestingly, they said that it was sparking really interesting conversations with their early teen in particular, that they hadn't realised about public transport. So they were able to kind of help put some strategies in place, the parent themselves, that hadn't realised that the child was feeling that way. There's the Power Up Success Planner, which is basically a planning tool. So once they've chosen their quest, they then plan it using the Power Up Planner. Then they carry out the quest. And then when they've carried out the quest, they use the Level Up Compass, which is basically 8 questions. And it uses an approach called metacognition, which sounds super posh. But metacognition is thinking about thinking. So it's thinking about what you know to work out what you don't know. And what it does is it really makes them think about, and this is led by the child, not by you as the parent, what was challenging for them, what went well, what strengths showed up, where could they leverage those strengths somewhere else. And then when they finish the Level Up Compass, you go right back to the beginning, you do the Success Skills Base Camp, you pick another quest, you download the quest, you plan it, they do the Level Up Compass, and you go back. And hopefully their confidence with the skills should be going up and up and up, and they should be coming increasingly, they should hopefully be developing life skills, developing confidence, and feeling good about themselves. And it should hopefully help you as parents have a bit of a structure, because I'm sure lots of you do this already, but this is a way of kind of capturing their progress themselves so that they feel like they're in control of it. Okay, with the summer holidays coming up, it's the perfect time to do it, because it can potentially tie a lot into what you're doing. You work through it at your own pace. So yeah, I'm very, very proud of it. So you've got exclusive access for 48 hours. Okay, it goes on public sale on Saturday. The first 10 purchases, £120, 180 for the next 10, and then it's going to be 220 after that. You basically access it via a platform. You have access all the time. There are the guides that you can download. There's also a little video from me talking through the task, talking to the child, and all the tools that you need to kind of use that structure. So if you have got any questions, reach out. But if you want the link, because you're only going to be able to buy it on a link and it's exclusive to you guys, drop me an email at hello@Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees, and you can have the link. And we've got to the end, question time, only 10 minutes late. So are there any questions? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see the people. I really hope that was helpful. Are there any questions in the box? No, just Louise saying hello, everyone. So if anybody does have a question, feel free to unmute your microphone and ask it. If you don't want to unmute your microphone, you can pop it in the chat box. But yes, I would love to hear from you if you have got questions. Yes?
Oh, hi, it's Maya.
Maya.
Hello. It's not so much a question. It was just that by something you said right at the start, and it's something that I recognise that I struggle to do as a parent, and it's to support Freddie with his independence, because like an example of like making breakfast, like I was explaining to a friend earlier, he makes porridge, which is great, but he doesn't put enough milk in it, and then he ends up just like making dust, and then it's really painful to watch. So I kind of said, like, I'll just have malt wheaties instead, but actually, like, I'm really going to try and make the effort to like let him make the porridge and like learn the ratio in between, and yeah, so I'm going to make like a conscious effort
Yeah, and I
to,
think it is difficult for sure to not step in, but actually it it's about building that resilience, isn't it? And actually, maybe it's about having a conversation, and maybe it's structuring it, maybe it's almost by having a jug that's got a bit of tape on it to begin with. That, this is how
yeah,
much milk you need. So he can still do it independently, but almost like kind of like Sharpie or tape, like where how much milk he needs to put in the jug. Do you see what I mean? To then pour into
yeah,
the
definitely.
then
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking to maybe like fill a glass up with milk,
yeah,
and then he knows, and then once he knows roughly what he's got to put in, but like it's really difficult because, like,
it is.
as you say, it's like you've got places to be in the morning,
Yeah,
you've got to, so I'm really going to make a conscious
yeah.
effort.
And it's not easy. And there are times, if it's like with breakfast. I mean, I posted I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot. I stopped making my kids breakfast from the minute they could pour their own cereal. And and I never nagged them about it particularly. But my daughter recently had A levels and she needed to eat before she went into that A level. So actually, I did on those days totally pander, like in as much as I would buy everything that she'd ever eat for breakfast once and like just put it out on the table. Because actually, on that situation, on those days, that's what she needed me to do. It's knowing,
The happy
and
medium, isn't
yeah,
it?
it's a happy medium for sure. And it's knowing when you need to step in as a parent, because actually it this is not about survival. This is about actually, thriving right now. And when actually he'll learn that actually next time he will need to make his porridge better because otherwise he won't get to eat it. Do you know what I mean? And he's going to be hungry
Yeah,
all day. Like but it is a tricky balance for sure.
yeah, it's just a natural consequence, isn't it?
Yeah, for
One of
sure.
those things. But yeah, I am going to make a conscious effort
Yeah,
to
cool.
not twitch.
It is difficult. Adriana, have you got a question?
Hello, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Hello, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for all that you have shared.
Oh,
Myself, I was diagnosed with dyslexia at 24. It was suspected quite often throughout my educational process, but nothing was ever assessed. It did have a massive impact on my confidence, and I've learned a lot of what you're sharing in terms of once I started to achieve, I started to believe that I could.
yeah.
I suspect my daughter has dyslexia, and she was in mainstream education initially, but she is currently homeschooled, and I feel like I'm going to try. At the moment, I can with my job, but long term, I think I really would like to try to continue this because she can read now and her
Yeah.
confidence has grown tremendously. So yeah, I hear a lot of. I really appreciate that you've really like identified. It was an idea that I had, but I wasn't certain. But hearing it from yourself, it really has resonated. The idea of once they can believe that they can achieve,
Yeah.
the outcomes for in lots of other areas will increase tremendously. And just like how you said in terms of like adjustments of, I understand that the mainstream educational system has a certain way that they'd like children to do things. However, in terms of like life skills, you don't need to be able to read the clock. Like there are adjustments that can be made for them to survive. So yeah, it really did echo the ideas of having the guilt of her not being in mainstream school, and just echoing the ideas of extracurriculum activity. She's fantastic at art, and yeah, just finding other ways to ensure that she has the basic skills that she needs to succeed, and how that will look moving forwards. So yeah, I really want to thank you for that because it did really speak to me of being the adult growing into further education, really panicking and needing that diagnosis and not really knowing where to turn. But for me, Dyslexia Association funded it for me, and that made such a difference in my trajectory moving forward. So yeah, again, thank you. And
You're
yeah,
welcome.
it's made me think deeply. And I can't buy it now, but I definitely do want to buy this
Yeah.
because it links up to solution
The
focus.
blueprint, and I think the blueprint is
Yeah.
really good for home educated parents. And I'm hoping to, like, as I've already got ideas for more quests. But I've just started with those ones to begin with. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I think as a late diagnosed dyslexic, the impact that it had on my confidence and self-esteem and how it shapes belief systems is huge. When you grow up feeling less than and you're giving 110% and you don't realize that 110% is worth it, actually confidence and self-esteem often becomes a bigger barrier than the dyslexia itself. And that is what I really hopefully wanted to get across to you. And it's interesting, people say to me all the time, like, your kids are so confident, like, how are they so confident? Like, I mean, they've all been, I've touched the surface of what they've done, but I mean, they've all been abroad without me. I could never have done that at their age. But you know, they're confident and they're brilliant at talking to people, and that's because we've really skilled them up. You know, right from when they were really little, they were involved in planning days out. You know, they were involved in, you know, they were lucky they had grandparents that took them on public transport, but they were kind of always involved in looking at the timetables. And it wasn't until somebody said to me, like, you need to turn that into a program, because actually people could follow that. But, you know, even if you don't have the program, as a parent, you can create your own version of it. But I think for me, it's all about it. They need to experience success, and whether we like it or not, and it's not a dig at teachers, the system is so broken, it doesn't allow them to experience enough success to make them feel confident. So what we want to be trying to do as parents, I think our most important job is to literally fill that self-esteem bucket up in whatever way we can, so that when they go to school on Monday, the bucket is overflowing, so that any negative experience they experience at school doesn't completely empty the bucket. You know, we just need to keep that virtual self-esteem bucket full. So yeah. Any other questions? Please feel free to ask. Sorry, I know it's now 3 minutes past 9, but I'm all right if you're all right. Any other questions? Yeah, finding things for the success bucket for sure. Yeah. And again, that's one of the reasons why I've created the program, to kind of, it's a solution for parents really that, you know, don't know where to start. It's a way of, it provides you with a framework. And I think once you've got that framework, you'll be able to apply it to all sorts of other things. But yeah, it is about just finding ways that they can be successful, from changing the bed to unloading the dishwasher to cutting the grass to, you know, what can they do that is unique to them and help them. Cool. Any other questions? Very quiet group tonight. Louise got a hand up. Or was that an accident? She unmuted and then muted again.
Oh, yeah. Hi.
Louise.
We're at a point just now, so we're up in Scotland, so my daughter is away to start primary 4. The transition is not going well. She just puts too much pressure on herself, and it's like the same. It's trying to fill that bucket up of how you can increase her confidence in that. And we're at a catch-22 just now, where it's like you want to get the practice in for like her spelling and things like that, but she's totally burnt out at the end of the day. And it's trying to find the balance of, you want them to get better, but I don't want to burn her out at the same time.
Yeah. And I can massively relate to that at the moment with one of my children, and all of my children have got slightly different profiles, and it's not easy. And I think sometimes it's really managing that teacher expectation. And I think particularly this time of year when they're super tired, but it is about, you've just got to find anything that they are a tiny bit good at and almost capture it. And slowly but surely kind of build on it. And it's not, flipping it is the most difficult thing. Does that make sense? Once you've flipped it and you've found kind of like the route in, it then begins to get a bit easier, but you have to have that success. It's the start point is the most difficult bit, I would say. Once you've started them on that trajectory of, we found something that you're good at and we're going to build on that, you're there. But it's finding the thing that they're good at. The other thing that sometimes happens is children have like, they're like really good at a particular hobby. So I'm just going to pick football for a minute. So like, kids are really good at football, and it's because the coach is kind of modeling it to them because they're little. But then all of a sudden they go up an age group, or they go up a grade, or they get a different coach. And rather than it being modeled to them, the instructions are shouted to them. And then suddenly that thing that they were really good at, that filled their self-esteem bucket up, becomes tricky. And what happens is quite often kids end up becoming disengaged because it's another place where they're experiencing failure. And what we need to try and do at that point is look at what was working for them before, look at what is changed, and kind of support. Because again, like coaches and things don't necessarily have that training or know what doesn't work for your children. But sometimes if you can take a step back and work out what does or doesn't work for your child, it can help you have that conversation. And what I would say is, I'm selling my own program now, but I do think something like the blueprint would be a great place for you to start, because we almost need that success initially to be separate from school. We don't want it to be attached to school, because, you know, when school actually for some kids is genuinely traumatic. You know, kids often are so broken by the time they finish school that it takes them a couple of years to recover, I'm finding in the research I'm doing for my book. So it's about initially probably finding success away from school that isn't academic based at all. You know, maybe they're good at baking, maybe they're really kind and they're, you know, good at helping an elderly neighbour, I don't know, but it's about finding something that is your start point that you can build on. And I don't have any like quick fixes, I'm afraid, but I think hopefully that gives you a few ideas. And with the summer holidays coming up, you know, it's only a few weeks now, hopefully you'll be able to find something to begin to flip that narrative. So if you feel like, by the way, if you feel like you need to go now, please feel free to log off. That's totally fine. And but if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay and keep asking questions. Michelle, you've got a question. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm going to try not to waffle because I'm good
That's
at
all
doing
right.
that. It's kind of like a few things in one, but they're all built into the same thing for both of my children, but kind of worrying from one from the other. So my daughter's 8, she's just going into year 4, and she's really worried about her new teacher, but she's kind of making herself be that it's like she is dyslexic and that's her whole person, is like, which is not. But she's good at gymnastics, she's good at dance, but she broke her ankle back in March, so she's like lost her confidence in that, because she's still going, but now she's just not, she's completely, all of her confidence and her resilience is gone. We're having daily tears over school and worrying about year 4. But then also my 6-year-old, so he's in year 1, I think he's possibly dyslexic too, but it's trying to get his teachers on side. And I had the same thing with my daughter, of them not listening to me, and now we're in this stage with her where she's massively behind. And it's like, how do you get teachers on side without, again, like, because you mentioned it about sort of getting,
so it's not always easy, and I'll be honest, there are some teachers that you don't ever get on side, and you just have to go with that. So first of all, I'm going to talk about your daughter. So it's a really good example of how clearly that thing she was really good at was balancing out her negative school experience, wasn't it? And now she can't do that thing. It's having a much, you know, school is having an even bigger impact on her confidence and self-esteem. What I would say is in terms of her personality being dyslexic, I get it. Like sometimes we think, and this is why, and it's always really controversial, but this is why I don't talk about dyslexia as a superpower, because actually dyslexia is, for me, dyslexia is the thing we find difficult. So if you tell a child they've got a superpower, it's contradictory, and that is controversial, because if you want to call it a superpower, that's fine. But for me, it's about finding other strengths other than academia. So yes, her gymnastics is a strength, but what else is she really good at? Because I bet she's really kind, I bet she's really creative, you know, I bet she's really good at helping people, all of those sorts of things. So it's about building and creating rounded humans, if you like, and not just developing the academic side or the thing that they're really good at. It's about developing the skills that kind of bridge those two things. And again, that's where the confidence blueprint is really good, because it's looking at those skills and how they link together. But I think moving to a new teacher is always anxious. It's always anxiety. It's always a bit anxiety driven, because you don't know what it's like. Actually, dyslexic people, just like ASC people, don't like change. Dyslexic people don't like change because we like routine and we like things to be familiar and we like it to be predictable. So I guess it's about trying to have open conversations with her and unpick what is it she's worried about. Like, has she heard that this teacher is really strict? Like, has she heard bad things? Like, almost like unpicking what it is she's worried about, so that you can almost go at it from another angle. Because if you know what it is and you can pinpoint what it is she's struggling with, you can,
yeah, which I do. I know what the issue is.
so you can then begin to look at how you counterbalance that. In terms of your son, if you feel like you've got a teacher that isn't going to listen to you, sometimes there isn't anything we can do about that. So I had, probably with my children, there were 3 or 4 years at primary school between them where I had teachers where I was just like, actually, this just isn't happening. Like, it doesn't matter. It just isn't happening. It isn't just going to be their year. And it sounds really awful, but I almost just wrote those years off. And we really upped our game in terms of the extracurricular stuff. And I mean, I should say, even though I'm a teacher in a Senko, I never did any tuition with my own children, like, because I very much wanted to be their mum, and actually that would never have worked. Like, there just would have been huge battles. You know, for me, there were a few times when, there was one time when I did get a bit of tuition for my son one year. I think that was in year 5. And then with my other children, I found that ally. I found somebody in school that could potentially support them. And your other way around it is to find somebody in school that you do have a good relationship with and have those conversations. The other thing I should say is as a parent, if you've got concerns regarding dyslexia, is to go armed with evidence. So if you download a free checklist, and there are loads of checklists out there, I've got one in my stand store, but there are loads of checklists out there. If you download a checklist and begin to build your evidence as to why your thinking is what your thinking is, you know, and get observations, you know, actually when he was reading his book last night, he couldn't get sight vocabulary. He was having to sound that word out, even though it was on the same 2 pages, he sounded it out every time. Like, if you can collect a bit of evidence and present that to the teacher, it's then much more difficult for the teacher to shut you down because you've done your homework. So I always advise parents to, like, go sort of armed with information. And again, you can go to the Senko. It doesn't have to be the class teacher. You can go to the Senko or the deputy head if you feel like you're not getting anywhere at primary school. The other thing to say is schools may not screen until the end of year 2, and that isn't their fault. The screens only start at that age. I mean, Louise is on as well, and she's an assessor. And actually, our guidance is that we shouldn't really assess or formally diagnose until to the age of 8. Occasionally, we will look at younger kids, but it's more of a needs assessment. Like, but just because they can't screen or they can't look at it doesn't mean that they can't look at the evidence that you've presented and see what interventions they've got in school and put some of those interventions in place. So that would be my advice. I hope that sort of answers that question.
Yeah.
Does that help, Michelle?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I know. So for my daughter, basically, and I think this is what's worrying me with my son, is that her year 1 teacher didn't listen to me, and so she was still working at year F level when she went into year 2. Then when she went into year 3, the junior school and the infant school just don't get on, basically. So they didn't listen to her year 2 teacher, and her year 3 teacher then didn't put anything in place until February. So she had like a lot of time. So it just worries me that I feel like I'm seeing a pattern. Year 1
and I think,
again.
And I think that, again, that's what's tricky as parents, and that's what teachers don't get. When we've been failed once, it's then quite stressful because we worry that we worry that we're going to be failed again. So no, I get it, but I think you've just got to go armed with as much evidence as you can and get them to put intervention in place. The other thing I want to say just about the blueprint is you only need to buy one per family. Like, it's not like you need a login for each separate kid, just in case there is anybody on here with more than one child. Okay, I hope that's okay, Michelle. I'm just going to go to another question. I'll do a few more minutes, and then I will finish. So my daughter is 12, struggling a lot in school. I'm debating trying a tutor, but worried it's going to make it worse. Okay, really, really good question, Rachel. So tuition can be super helpful, but your child needs to buy into that. And again, the timing needs to be right. So there are times when actually getting a tutor would potentially exacerbate the issue, but other times it would make it worse. The main thing I would say is it's about getting the right tutor. So if you can find a tutor that totally gets your child and is going to meet them where they're at, a tutor can be game changing. Absolutely game changing, simply because it's an opportunity for that child to be experiencing success academically. There isn't a right or a wrong answer, and I think that there are specialist dyslexia tutors out there that will teach, and specialist dyslexic teachers tend to teach just word reading and spelling. They're very literacy based. Sometimes actually more general teachers that teach approaches can be more useful. And again, you would need to make a judgment. So yes, I hope that answers that question, and you're very welcome, Julie. I hope that it helps. So unless there are any more questions, I think we will call that it. But I am hugely grateful that so many people logged on. I didn't actually see how many people it was at its peak, but I think it was about 26, and we had 96 people register in the end. So that will be emailed out to everybody tomorrow. So thank you so much for your time, guys. I'm going to stop the recording.